Imagine walking into a classroom only to be humiliated in front of everyone for something that should be a source of pride. For this young black girl, what began as an ordinary school day quickly turned into a nightmare, but the end of this story will shock you. How did this fight for justice uncover a hidden truth and transform an entire school? Watch until the end to find out. Maya Williams sat quietly in the back seat of her father's car, her hands folded tightly in her lap as they drove through the unfamiliar streets of Fairview Heights. The neighborhood looked picture-perfect, tree-lined avenues with sprawling houses, freshly manicured lawns, and mailboxes adorned with cheerful decorations. But to Maya, it felt cold and distant, like a place she wasn't meant to belong. Her parents, Marcus and Janet, chatted animatedly in the front seat, their voices filled with optimism about the new opportunities this move would bring. Marcus glanced at Maya in the rearview mirror, his warm eyes meeting hers. "This is it, sweetheart," he said with a smile, trying to lift her spirits. A fresh start, new school, new adventures. Maya forced a small smile, but her heart wasn't in it. She missed the familiar rhythms of her old neighborhood, where everyone knew each other, and she didn't have to think about fitting in. As they pulled into the driveway of their new home, Janet turned around in her seat, her excitement evident. "What do you think, Maya?" "Isn't it beautiful?" she asked, gesturing toward the house with its white shutters and welcoming porch. Maya nodded politely, stepping out of the car and into a world that felt entirely foreign. Inside the house, the smell of fresh paint greeted them, and Marcus led them on a quick tour, pointing out the cozy nook by the window where Maya could do her homework and the spacious backyard he was already envisioning for family barbecues. Maya listened absently, her thoughts consumed by what the next day would bring, her first day at Fairview High. That night, as she sat on her bed unpacking boxes, Maya stared at the framed photo of her and her best friend from her old school, a pang of homesickness washing over her. She laid out her outfit for the next day, a simple but favorite combination, and made sure her braids were perfectly neat. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, though her reflection in the mirror didn't look as convinced. The next morning, Fairview High loomed large and intimidating, its brick facade gleaming in the morning sun. Maya clutched her schedule tightly as she navigated the crowded hallways, the noise of lockers slamming and students chatting making her feel even more out of place. The stares started almost immediately, quick glances, murmurs, and whispers that followed her like a shadow. By the time she found her first class, her heart was racing, and she wished desperately to disappear. The teacher, Ms. Andrews, greeted her with a polite but distant smile, introducing her to the class. "This is Maya Williams," she announced. "Please make her feel welcome." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya lowered her gaze and shuffled to an empty seat at the back, acutely aware of the eyes on her. Throughout the day, the pattern repeated, stares, whispers, and a sense of being an outsider that clung to her like a second skin. During lunch, she mustered the courage to approach a table of girls and asked, "Is this seat taken?" The blonde at the table shrugged without looking up. "I guess," she muttered, returning to her conversation. Maya sat down, hoping to join in, but the girls ignored her entirely. Snippets of their conversation hinted at their disapproval, and Maya felt her appetite evaporate. The day dragged on, and by the time she returned home, she was emotionally drained. That evening, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Maya whispered to herself again, "Tomorrow will be better." But deep down, she wasn't sure she believed it. Maya woke up determined to approach her second day at Fairview High with optimism, though the lingering unease from the previous day weighed heavily on her. She spent extra time perfecting her braids and choosing a bright orange scrunchie, hoping the cheerful color might bolster her confidence. At breakfast, her father, Marcus, noticed her thoughtful expression and asked gently, "You nervous?" Maya hesitated before nodding. Marcus reached over, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You've got nothing to prove to anyone but yourself," he said firmly. Maya held onto his words as she walked into the school building, the bustling hallways just as overwhelming as before. She found her way to history class, where the teacher, Ms. Andrews, was already at the front of the room, writing on the chalkboard. Maya slipped into a seat near the middle, determined not to draw attention to herself. But as the lesson began, Ms. Andrews posed a question about the day's reading, and Maya's hand instinctively shot up. The teacher paused, her gaze falling on Maya with a hint of skepticism. "Are you sure you know the answer?" she asked, her tone sharp. Maya hesitated, her confidence faltering under the weight of the question. I think so," she stammered. Ms. Andrews sighed audibly and called on another student, who answered with ease and received a nod of approval. Maya sank into her seat, her cheeks burning with humiliation as the class moved on. At lunch, the cafeteria was just as intimidating as the day before. Maya spotted a table with a group of girls who seemed friendly and approached cautiously. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. One of the girls glanced up briefly, her expression indifferent. "Sure," she said flatly, before returning to her conversation. Maya sat quietly, trying to find a way into the group's chatter, but every attempt was met with polite but dismissive responses. By the end of lunch, Maya felt more isolated than ever, the weight of the day pressing heavily on her shoulders. That evening, she sat at her desk, staring at her homework but unable to focus. Her mind replayed Ms. Andrews' cutting remarks and the cold stares of her classmates. When Marcus knocked on her door and asked how her day had gone, Maya forced a smile and replied, "It was fine." But as she turned back to her notebook, her thoughts whispered a different story. The third week at Fairview High began no differently from the others, with Maya walking through the school's crowded hallways feeling the weight of every glance, every whispered word. The sense of isolation had become almost suffocating, and Maya found herself dreading each new day. The cafeteria was her least favorite place, a sea of students divided into groups where she never quite seemed to fit. One afternoon, she approached a table where a girl from her English class was sitting. "Is this seat taken?" Maya asked hesitantly. The girl looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and reluctance. "I guess not," she replied, motioning half-heartedly to the empty seat. Maya sat down, trying to join the conversation, but every comment she made was met with silence or a quick change of topic. As the minutes dragged on, Maya felt her chest tighten with a familiar ache of rejection. After school, she retreated to her room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her braids were neat, her clothes carefully chosen, but no amount of effort seemed to make her feel like she belonged. That evening, Marcus found her sitting on the porch steps, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "You okay, kiddo?" he asked, sitting beside her. Maya shrugged. "I'm trying, Dad. But it's like, no one wants me here." Marcus sighed, his heart breaking for his daughter. "They don't know what they're missing," he said gently. "You've got so much to offer, Maya. Don't let them take that from you." His words were comforting, but the pain in Maya's chest remained. It was a Monday morning when everything came to a head. Maya arrived at school early, her braids neatly styled and tied with a purple ribbon that matched her favorite sweater. She hoped the day might be different, but that hope was short-lived. In history class, Ms. Andrews was reviewing an assignment when she suddenly called Maya to the front of the room. "Maya," she said sharply, "come here, please." The classroom fell silent, and Maya's heart raced as she walked to the teacher's desk. "I've told you before," Ms. Andrews continued, her tone cold, "that distractions are not acceptable in my classroom." Maya blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, Ms. Andrews, but I don't understand." The teacher's gaze fell on Maya's braids, and Maya's stomach dropped. "Your hair," Ms. Andrews said. "It's distracting." Before Maya could respond, the teacher opened her desk drawer and pulled out a pair of scissors. "No, please," Maya managed, her voice trembling. But Ms. Andrews ignored her, grabbing a section of her braids and cutting it off with a swift motion. Gasps filled the room as Maya stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. "There," Ms. Andrews said, dropping the severed braid onto the desk. "Now we can focus." The humiliation was unbearable, and Maya fled the classroom, tears streaming down her face. She spent the rest of the day hiding in the restroom, replaying the moment over and over in her mind. That evening, when Marcus found her in her room, she broke down completely, recounting every detail through sobs. Marcus listened, his fists clenching in anger as she spoke. "She did what?" he demanded, his voice shaking with fury. "This isn't over, Maya. I promise you, we're going to make this right." Marcus spent the rest of the night pacing the living room, his fists clenched and his mind racing. The walls, usually adorned with family photos and a sense of warmth, felt like they were closing in as he struggled to contain the storm of emotions brewing inside him. His daughter's sobs from earlier still echoed in his ears, each one a reminder of her pain and humiliation. How could a teacher, someone entrusted with the care and development of students, do something so cruel? Marcus's jaw tightened as he replayed the details Maya had shared, the sheer audacity of Ms. Andrews grabbing those scissors and cutting her hair without permission. It wasn't just about the braids, it was about stripping away a piece of his daughter's identity, her culture, her pride. By the time dawn broke, Marcus had made up his mind, he would fight this with everything he had. When Maya came downstairs the next morning, her steps hesitant and her eyes downcast, Marcus greeted her with a determined look. "We're going to the school today," he announced, his tone leaving no room for argument. Maya froze, her heart sinking. "Dad, no. Please, I don't want to make it worse." Her voice wavered, the fear of retaliation evident. Marcus softened his expression and walked over, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't have to face this alone. I won't let them get away with what they did to you. But I need you to trust me." Maya hesitated, then nodded, her father's unwavering support giving her a sliver of hope. Together, they drove to Fairview High, the tension in the car palpable. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white, while Maya stared out the window, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. When they arrived, Marcus strode into the main office with purpose, his presence commanding attention. The receptionist looked up, startled by his intensity. "I need to speak to Principal Harris," Marcus said firmly. The receptionist blinked, then quickly picked up the phone to make the call. Moments later, they were ushered into the principal's office, a room that felt overly polished and devoid of warmth. Principal Harris greeted them with a practiced smile, his tone measured. "Mr. Williams, Maya. Please, have a seat. What brings you here today?" Marcus didn't bother with pleasantries. "What brings me here is the fact that my daughter was humiliated in front of her entire class yesterday by a teacher who decided she had the right to cut Maya's hair." Harris's smile faltered, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Mr. Williams, I understand your concern, but nothing," Marcus interrupted, his voice rising. "This wasn't just a mistake. This was a blatant act of disrespect and abuse. And I want to know what you're going to do about it." Maya sat silently beside her father, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the weight of the situation made her feel small. Harris cleared his throat, his tone becoming more defensive. "I've spoken with Ms. Andrews, and she insists that she was enforcing the school's dress code. She felt the hairstyle was a distraction." Marcus slammed his hand on the desk, making both Harris and Maya jump. "A distraction? That's the excuse you're going with? Since when does a hairstyle violate the dress code? And even if it did, what gave her the right to take matters into her own hands?" Harris opened his mouth to respond but seemed to think better of it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "Mr. Williams, we take these matters seriously, and will conduct a thorough investigation. However, I ask for your patience as we go through the proper channels." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You have until the end of the week. If I don't see action by then, I'll take this to the school board, and beyond." Harris nodded, his expression unreadable, and the meeting ended with no clear resolution. As Marcus and Maya walked out of the office, Maya glanced up at her father, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you really think they'll do anything?" Marcus looked down at her, his eyes filled with resolve. "If they don't, we will." After leaving the school, Marcus wasted no time. He began reaching out to other parents, community leaders, and anyone who would listen. His first call was to Jasmine's parents, who were shocked and outraged by what had happened to Maya. "This isn't just about Maya," Marcus said over the phone. "It's about every kid who's ever felt like they don't belong in this school. We need to stand together." Jasmine's mother agreed wholeheartedly, promising to spread the word among other parents. Marcus also contacted a local journalist he knew, sharing Maya's story in vivid detail. The journalist, Rachel, listened intently, her voice laced with sympathy and determination. "This needs to be heard," she said. "I'll write the piece, but I'll need quotes in as much detail as you can give me." Marcus spent the next few hours recounting everything Maya had gone through, from the whispers and stares to the moment Ms. Andrews cut her braids. Meanwhile, Maya found herself struggling with a mix of emotions. On one hand, she was grateful for her father's unwavering support. On the other, she felt exposed, her private pain now a public fight. Jasmine visited her that evening, bringing a sense of comfort Maya desperately needed. "You're brave, Maya," Jasmine said, sitting beside her on the couch. "I don't know if I could do what you're doing." Maya looked at her friend, her voice tinged with doubt. "I don't feel brave. I feel scared." Jasmine nodded. "That's what makes it brave. Doing it anyway, even when you're scared." The article was published the next morning, its headline bold and unapologetic: "Students' Humiliation Sparks Outrage, a Fight for Justice at Fairview High." The piece detailed Maya's experience, shedding light on the broader issues of discrimination within the school. It included quotes from Marcus, Jasmine, and even other students who had faced similar challenges. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media lit up with posts supporting Maya, while others criticized the school for its inaction. At Fairview High, the atmosphere was tense. Some students approached Maya with words of encouragement, while others avoided her entirely. A few even whispered cruel remarks as she passed, their words cutting deep despite her best efforts to ignore them. Jasmine stayed by her side, her presence a comforting shield against the negativity. Meanwhile, Marcus's phone rang nonstop as parents and community members reached out to offer their support. One call stood out, a representative from a local advocacy group who offered to help organize a protest outside the school. "We need to show them we're serious," the representative said. Marcus agreed, the wheels already turning in his mind. That evening, Maya found herself scrolling through messages of support on her phone, her heart swelling with gratitude. But the negative comments lingered, casting a shadow over the progress they were making. She turned to Marcus, her voice hesitant. "Dad, what if this doesn't change anything? What if they just ignore us?" Marcus knelt beside her, his expression unwavering. "Then we keep fighting, Maya. Until they can't ignore us anymore." The morning of the protest was gray and overcast, the air heavy with the promise of rain. But that didn't deter the crowd that gathered outside Fairview High, their signs held high and their voices united. "Justice for Maya," they chanted, their words echoing across the school grounds. Maya stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding as she took it all in. Marcus stood beside her, his hand resting reassuringly on her shoulder. "This is for you, sweetheart," he said softly. Maya nodded, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "It's for all of us." Jasmine stepped up to the makeshift podium, her voice clear and confident as she addressed the crowd. "This isn't just about one student or one teacher," she said. "This is about a system that has failed us for too long. Maya's bravery has shown us what's possible when we stand together. Now it's time to demand change." The crowd erupted in applause, their energy palpable. As the protest continued, reporters snapped photos, and news crews captured footage. Inside the school, Principal Harris watched from his office window, his expression unreadable. Ms. Andrews, meanwhile, sat in the teacher's lounge, her face a mask of irritation. "All this over a haircut," she muttered to no one in particular. But even she couldn't ignore the growing pressure. As the day wore on, Maya began to feel a flicker of hope. The voices around her were loud and unrelenting, a force that couldn't be silenced. For the first time, she felt like change was truly possible. The weight of the protest and the ongoing public outcry pushed the school board to expedite their investigation into Ms. Andrews and the broader claims of discrimination at Fairview High. Maya, along with her father and friends, was called to provide detailed testimonies in a series of formal interviews. The meeting room where the interviews were held was stark and intimidating, its beige walls and single fluorescent light giving it an almost clinical feel. Maya sat at the head of the long table, her hands folded tightly on her lap, as a panel of board members watched her intently. Marcus sat beside her, his presence a source of steady reassurance, while Jasmine and Leah sat a few seats away, ready to corroborate her story. Maya, one of the board members, a woman with sharp glasses and an unreadable expression, began, "Thank you for coming today. We understand this must be difficult for you. Could you start by telling us, in your own words, what happened in Ms. Andrews' classroom?" Maya took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she recounted every detail of the incident, the shock, the humiliation, and the laughter of her classmates. Her words were punctuated by moments of silence as she tried to hold back tears, her father's hand resting gently on her shoulder for support. "It wasn't just about the hair," Maya said, her voice growing steadier. "It was about how she made me feel, like I didn't belong, like I wasn't worth anything." The board members exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from sympathetic to contemplative. As Jasmine and Leah spoke next, their voices filled with conviction, Maya felt a swell of gratitude for her friend's unwavering support. Jasmine described the hostile environment at Fairview, emphasizing that Maya's experience was far from isolated. "It's not just about one teacher," Jasmine said firmly. "It's about a culture that allows this kind of behavior to happen over and over again." By the end of the interviews, Maya felt emotionally drained but also lighter, as though a small part of the weight she'd been carrying had finally been lifted. That evening, she sat with Marcus at the kitchen table, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet space. "You did amazing today," Marcus said, his voice filled with pride. Maya offered a small smile, her heart warming at his words. "Do you think it'll make a difference?" she asked softly. Marcus met her gaze, his expression resolute. "It already has, Maya. And we're not done yet." As the investigation progressed, resistance from certain corners of the community began to grow. A small but vocal group of parents and students defended Ms. Andrews, arguing that the situation had been blown out of proportion. At a town hall meeting organized by the school board, tensions ran high as both sides clashed. Marcus and Maya sat near the front, listening as a parent stood up and declared, "Ms. Andrews has been a dedicated teacher for over 20 years. This whole thing is a witch hunt." Murmurs of agreement rippled through a section of the crowd, but Marcus was quick to respond. Rising to his feet, he spoke with a calm yet commanding presence. "This isn't about attacking one teacher," he said firmly. "It's about holding people accountable for their actions and ensuring that every student feels safe and respected. My daughter was humiliated and violated in a way no child should ever have to experience. If we ignore that, what kind of message are we sending to our kids?" His words were met with applause from many in the room, but the tension remained thick. Meanwhile, Maya sat quietly, her heart pounding as she listened to the heated exchanges around her. She felt a surge of gratitude for her father's strength but couldn't shake the knot of anxiety in her stomach. That night, as they drove home, Marcus turned to her and said, "Don't let their noise drown out your truth, Maya. What happened to you matters, and so does what we're fighting for." Maya nodded, her father's words a lifeline in the storm of doubt and resistance. The school board's investigation began to uncover patterns of behavior that extended far beyond Ms. Andrews' classroom. Testimonies from other students revealed a troubling culture of bias and neglect that had gone unaddressed for years. One student, a sophomore named Raj, recounted how a teacher had dismissed his science project as too ambitious for someone with his background. Another, a junior named Ellie, shared how she had been repeatedly mocked by her classmates for her accent, with no intervention from her teachers. As these stories came to light, the narrative began to shift. This wasn't just about Maya, it was about systemic issues that had been festering within the school for far too long. Maya listened to these stories with a mix of heartbreak and resolve. She felt a deep connection to the other students, their pain echoing her own, and it strengthened her determination to see this fight through to the end. At home, Marcus spent hours on the phone, coordinating with parents and community leaders to push for broader changes. "This isn't just about firing one teacher," he said during a call with a local activist. "It's about making sure this never happens again." The next day, Maya found herself sitting with Jasmine, Leah, and Raj at lunch, their bond growing stronger as they shared their experiences and hopes for the future. "Do you think they'll actually do something about all this?" Raj asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. Jasmine nodded. "They have to. We're not giving them a choice." The day of the school board's final hearing arrived with a sense of both anticipation and dread. The auditorium was packed, the air buzzing with tension as parents, students, and teachers filled the seats. Maya sat with her father and Jasmine in the front row, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. The board members filed in, their expressions serious as they took their seats. The superintendent began by addressing the crowd. "After a thorough investigation, we have determined that there were clear violations of both policy and ethical standards in this case," he said, his tone measured. "Effective immediately, Ms. Andrews will no longer be employed at Fairview High." A wave of relief swept through the room, followed by a mix of applause and murmurs. Maya felt tears sting her eyes as Marcus reached over to squeeze her hand. "They heard you, Maya," he said softly. But the superintendent wasn't finished. "Additionally, we will be implementing a series of reforms to address the broader issues that have come to light during this investigation. This includes mandatory diversity training for all staff and the creation of a student advocacy council to ensure that every voice is heard." As the meeting concluded, Maya felt a profound sense of validation. This wasn't just a victory for her, it was a step toward meaningful change. Outside the auditorium, reporters flocked to Marcus and Maya, their cameras flashing and microphones extended. "Maya, how do you feel about the board's decision?" one journalist asked. Maya hesitated, then smiled. "It's a start," she said simply. That evening, as she sat on the porch with Marcus, the cool night air wrapping around them, she turned to her father and said, "Thank you for fighting for me, Dad." Marcus smiled, his voice filled with pride. "Always, sweetheart. Always." The day following the school board's decision, Fairview High felt like a different place, but the echoes of the past lingered in subtle ways. Maya walked through the crowded hallways with her head held higher than before, though the weight of stares and whispers still clung to her like a faint shadow. Some students nodded in acknowledgement as she passed, their gestures timid but supportive, while others avoided her gaze altogether. The empty desk where Ms. Andrews once sat was a stark reminder of how far things had come, and how far they still had to go. Maya couldn't shake the image of her teacher's cold expression when the decision was announced, a mixture of disbelief and resentment that sent a chill through her. At lunch, Jasmine, Leah, and Raj joined Maya at their usual table, their conversation quieter than usual. "So," Jasmine began, breaking the silence, "how does it feel knowing she's gone?" Maya shrugged, her gaze drifting to the window. "I don't know. Part of me feels relieved, but another part, it just feels heavy, like it's not really over." Leah nodded, her voice soft. "That's because it isn't. This is just the beginning, Maya. The school might be changing, but people's attitudes take time." Raj leaned forward, his tone more resolute. "But it is a win. And we'll keep pushing until it's more than just policies. We'll make sure it's a real change." That evening, Marcus sat with Maya in the living room, the faint glow of the television casting shadows on the walls. He handed her a small folder, its contents carefully organized. "What's this?" Maya asked, opening it to find a collection of letters and messages. "Support," Marcus replied with a small smile. "People from all over the community wrote to you. I thought you should see them." As Maya read through the heartfelt words, some from students she barely knew, others from complete strangers, she felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. "I didn't realize so many people cared," she whispered. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've inspired them, Maya. That's something powerful." For the first time in weeks, Maya allowed herself to feel a spark of pride. The changes at Fairview High were swift and visible. Diversity training sessions were scheduled for the teachers, their attendance mandatory and closely monitored by the administration. A new student advocacy council was formed, its members a mix of students from different backgrounds, including Maya, Jasmine, and Raj. The first meeting of the council took place in a bright, newly renovated room at the school, its walls adorned with posters promoting inclusivity and respect. Maya sat at the head of the table, a mix of nervousness and determination coursing through her. Principal Harris stood at the back, observing silently as the students began to share their thoughts. "This is a good start," Jasmine said, glancing around the table. "But we need to make sure it's not just for show. We need real accountability." Raj nodded in agreement. "And we need to make sure students feel safe speaking up. Right now, most people are too scared to say anything." Maya listened intently, her thoughts swirling. When it was her turn to speak, she hesitated for a moment before finding her voice. I think we need to start by listening. Not just to the loudest voices, but to everyone. Even the people who don't think this is a problem. We need to understand where they're coming from if we're going to change their minds." The room fell silent for a moment, then Harris stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "That's a wise approach, Maya," he said. "It's going to take time, but with students like you leading the way, I believe we can make this school a better place." For the first time, Maya saw a glimpse of genuine commitment in Harris's eyes, and it gave her a flicker of hope. After the meeting, Maya and her friends walked through the hallways, their conversation filled with ideas for the council. Though the weight of the past still lingered, Maya began to feel a sense of purpose, a belief that they could truly make a difference. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity and reflection. The diversity training sessions brought mixed reactions from the staff. Some teachers embraced the opportunity to learn and grow, while others attended begrudgingly, their skepticism thinly veiled. Maya couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere in the classrooms began to shift. Teachers like Ms. Rodriguez, who had replaced Ms. Andrews, made an effort to create a more welcoming environment. On Maya's first day in Ms. Rodriguez's class, the new teacher greeted her with a warm smile and said, "I've heard a lot about you, Maya. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do." The words, simple as they were, filled Maya with a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in months. Outside the classroom, the advocacy council began to gain momentum. At their second meeting, the group discussed plans for a school-wide event promoting cultural awareness and unity. "We could have booths where people share their traditions," Leah suggested, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "And maybe performances, like dances or songs from different cultures," Raj added. Maya nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. It could be a way to celebrate what makes us different and what brings us together. The event, dubbed Fairview United, quickly became the focus of the council's efforts. Posters were hung around the school, and students from all grades volunteered to participate. The anticipation for the event created a buzz that Maya hadn't seen before, a sense of hope that the school was finally moving in the right direction. Yet, despite the progress, there were moments that reminded Maya of how far they still had to go. One afternoon, as she walked to her locker, she overheard a group of students muttering under their breath, their words laced with sarcasm. "Guess we all have to walk on eggshells now, thanks to her," one of them said. Maya paused, her chest tightening, but she chose to keep walking. Later, when she shared the incident with Marcus, he looked at her with a mix of pride and sadness. "You can't change everyone overnight," he said. "But you're planting seeds, Maya. And that's how real change starts." The day of the Fairview United event was bright and filled with energy. The gymnasium was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity, with booths lining the walls and a stage set up at the front for performances. Maya arrived early with Jasmine and Raj, the three of them bustling with last-minute preparations. The air was thick with anticipation, the hum of conversation and laughter filling the space as students and parents began to pour in. Each booth represented a different culture, showcasing traditional clothing, food, and artifacts. Maya's booth featured a display of African braiding styles, complete with a live demonstration from her mother, who had volunteered to help. "This is amazing, Maya," Jasmine said, looking around. "You should be proud." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It's not just me. It's all of us." The highlight of the event was a series of performances, ranging from traditional dances to spoken-word poetry. When it was Maya's turn to take the stage, she stepped forward with a mix of nerves and excitement. Her speech was simple but heartfelt, a reflection on her journey and the power of community. "This school has been through a lot," she began, her voice steady. "But what I've learned is that change doesn't happen because of one person. It happens when we come together, when we listen to each other, and when we refuse to give up." The crowd erupted into applause, and Maya felt a warmth she hadn't known in a long time. That evening, as she and her friends cleaned up the gymnasium, she looked around and realized how much had changed. Fairview High was still far from perfect, but it was no longer the place that had once made her feel invisible. As they walked home under the glow of the streetlights, Jasmine turned to Maya and said, "You did it. You really made a difference." Maya smiled, her heart full. "We all did." In the weeks following the Fairview United event, the school seemed to settle into a new rhythm, one that felt lighter and more inclusive. The changes weren't just in policy or structure, they were visible in the way students interacted with one another, in the way teachers addressed their classes, and in the small but significant acts of kindness that began to emerge. Maya walked through the hallways one morning and noticed a group of students helping a shy freshman pick up his books after they'd fallen. It was a small moment, but it filled her with a quiet pride, knowing that the seeds of change she had helped plant were beginning to bloom. But not all the changes were immediate, and there were still challenges to face. One afternoon, Maya found herself in the cafeteria when a student loudly complained about the diversity initiatives, muttering, "Why do we even need this stuff?" The comment stung, but before Maya could respond, Jasmine spoke up. "Because everyone deserves to feel like they belong here," she said firmly, her voice carrying across the room. The student looked away, uncomfortable, while Maya felt a surge of gratitude for her friend's courage. That evening, Maya sat with her father, going through the latest feedback from the Student Advocacy Council. "It's working, isn't it?" she asked, her voice tinged with both hope and uncertainty. Marcus nodded, his smile reassuring. "It is. And it's because of you, Maya. You've shown everyone what it means to stand up for what's right." As they talked, Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment, realizing that the fight wasn't just about her, it was about creating a lasting legacy for everyone at Fairview High. By the end of the school year, the changes at Fairview High had become undeniable. The diversity and inclusion workshops had evolved into a regular part of the curriculum, and the Student Advocacy Council had become a powerful voice for change. Maya found herself stepping into a leadership role within the council, her confidence growing with each meeting. One day, the council was tasked with reviewing a new proposal from the administration, a mentorship program pairing older students with incoming freshmen to help them adjust to high school life. Maya immediately saw the potential in the idea and worked tirelessly with her peers to develop the program. "This could be huge," Jasmine said during one of their planning sessions. "Imagine how much easier it would have been if we'd had something like this when we started." Maya nodded, her mind racing with ideas. "We'll make it happen," she said, her determination clear. The program launched in the fall and was an instant success, with dozens of students volunteering to be mentors. Maya was paired with a nervous freshman named Sarah, whose wide eyes and hesitant smile reminded her of herself not so long ago. Over the months, Maya watched Sarah blossom, her confidence growing with each passing day. It was a reminder of how far she had come and how much of a difference one person could make. As the school year drew to a close, Fairview High hosted its annual awards ceremony, an event that had always been a simple celebration of academic and athletic achievements. But this year, the ceremony included a new award, the Courage and Leadership Award, created to honor students who had gone above and beyond to make a positive impact on the school community. Maya sat in the audience with her father, Jasmine, Leah, and Raj by her side, her heart pounding as the principal took the stage to announce the recipient. This year, we are proud to present the Courage and Leadership Award to a student who has shown extraordinary bravery, resilience, and a commitment to creating a better future for all of us, Principal Harris said, his voice steady. Maya Williams. The auditorium erupted into applause as Maya rose to her feet, her cheeks flushed with emotion. She made her way to the stage, her hands trembling as she accepted the plaque. "Thank you," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "This isn't just my award, it's for everyone who stood by me, who believed in me, and who fought with me. Together, we've shown that change is possible, and that's something I'll carry with me forever." As she stepped off the stage, Marcus pulled her into a tight hug, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Maya. You've done something incredible." That night, as Maya lay in bed, she thought about how far she had come. The journey had been painful and exhausting, but it had also been transformative. For the first time, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had not only found her voice but used it to make a difference. The summer that followed was a time of reflection and growth for Maya. She spent her days volunteering at a local community center, helping younger kids with their schoolwork and sharing her story to inspire them. "You're like a superhero," one little girl said, her eyes wide with admiration. Maya laughed, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I'm just like you," she replied. "And you can be a superhero too." Back at Fairview High, the changes continued to take root. The mentorship program flourished, the diversity training sessions expanded, and the Student Advocacy Council grew stronger with each passing year. Maya's impact was felt long after she graduated, her name becoming synonymous with resilience and courage. On the last day of summer, as she prepared to start her senior year, Maya stood in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back at her with a newfound confidence. She adjusted her braids, the same style that had once made her a target, and smiled. They were no longer a source of pain, they were a symbol of her strength, her identity, and her journey. That evening, Marcus surprised her with a small celebration, inviting Jasmine, Leah, and Raj over for dinner. As they laughed and reminisced about the past year, Maya felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people who had stood by her through everything. When the night came to an end, Marcus pulled Maya aside, his expression serious but filled with pride. "You've changed this school, Maya. But more importantly, you've changed yourself. And that's something no one can ever take away from you." Maya nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad." The next morning, as she walked into Fairview High for her senior year, the halls felt different. The whispers and stares were gone, replaced by smiles and nods of recognition. Maya walked with her head held high, her steps confident and purposeful. She had found her place, not just in the school, but in the world. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Maya's story is one of courage, resilience, and the power of standing up for what's right. If you were inspired by her journey, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story like this. Together, let's continue sharing stories that inspire and empower. See you in the next video.